We're here with Dr. X Hughes. He's a visiting fellow for cybersecurity at the University of Cambridge and one of the leading experts for cybersecurity. And he's also a speaker at this year's St. Gallen Symposium. Dr. Hughes, looking at the widely fatalistic reaction of users to recent attacks on Sony's online gaming network, have users already implicitly accepted the powerlessness of companies against such crimes?
It's an interesting question. I suppose in some cases they have, that so much of the innovation and the networking and the communications are unfolding at such a rapid rate. When you acquire software or an online service, you're familiar with the end user agreement, which sometimes runs pages, if not miles, and how many users actually read those and process them correctly and know what they're getting into. And on the other end, how many companies really understand fully the services they're offering and the future impact or attacks that may come with them. So it's a very delicate balance at this time.
So far, at least it seems to the public, that relatively few serious incidences of cybercrimes have occurred. Is the fear of cybercrimes exaggerated?
I'm not sure that I would buy the statement that few have occurred, maybe in public consciousness relative.
That's what I mean.
Okay, but still, it's in the news almost daily, so depending on which country and province you're in, you may or may not interpret that differently. When we speak to the public through the university, we find that most part people tend to be quite terrified as to what's happening out there. They just hope it's not happening to them. So public education will go a reasonably long way, but ultimately the solution to a lot of these problems is better engineering. Policy is fundamental. It's always got to be there, but when it works, it should kind of be in the background and informing the process. And many of the attacks, we'll take the Sony attack. Again, we still don't know if, as I referenced in my presentation with Rafael, was it technical brilliance, engineering brilliance and prowess, or was it actually just sloppy management within the company, or just not best practices implemented? We don't know yet, but these enter the mythology and the kind of cyber scare narrative that's out there. So I think part of the public feels terrified by this stuff and maybe disempowered, and then more savvy users understand that they need to take proactive steps, including institutions and corporations. But this is unfolding. It's new territory. There aren't easy answers. Some of the solutions are quite expensive, but Jeff Moss talked about in his work session the need for a more secure engineering culture and to think about security right at the offset in designing software. And that hasn't really been traditionally in the culture. It's much of the software community, Silicon Valley, has been kind of freewheeling, hippie mystic culture. And now as it enters the military law enforcement world, it's time to grow up and get serious about these things.
A lot of hackers or former hackers become renowned security experts at professional firms. Isn't it just very, it's just very easy for them to make money, but they also do money with a lot of fear. I mean, what do you say?
Sometimes they work for the wrong side.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, it's where's the highest bidder and what are the opportunities? Unfortunately, we do see unethical hackers that may profit, especially in developing countries, from working from the dark side, or more specifically organized crime. But it would be sad if we lose some of the hacker ethic, because that's how a lot of us learned our computing skills growing up. I'm certainly not innocent, but maybe the scale and magnitude of what kids can do today are a lot greater. I mean, think about the great Hollywood movies, from War Games to Die Hard, and what some of the future scenarios may be. And kids could get themselves in a lot of trouble, if not in jail, for things 10 years ago may not have been treated the same way. And there's a lot more legislation coming that will criminalize, maybe too much so in certain cases, hacking capabilities, because again, you don't want to completely remove this from your country. It's also on the cusp of innovation, but it's as they say in the business, a thin blue line.
Cyber war or cyber warfare has become a popular topic in the media, but in a cyber war, who's actually the perpetrator and who is the enemy?
That is sort of the trillion-euro question, isn't it? That again, the kind of mythology is out there. If you go back to Estonia, in 2007, the bronze soldier statue, which was a sort of political decision that turned into a small cyber war, so-called cyber war. And what's interesting about a case like that is it doesn't really matter what did or did not occur. What matters is the institutional reaction. And what happened that the president of Estonia ended up ringing Brussels looking for help from both the EU as well as NATO and did not get a satisfactory answer. And both organizations ended up taking up the issue, most consequentially NATO, which formed an ad hoc body within a cyber management authority, a center in Tallinn, Estonia, to do the future war planning in this area, and trying to pull together some type of coherent mechanism to respond in the future. So these, just like Sony, these watershed moments tend not to be so important necessarily what did happen at that occurrence, but how it's interpreted in the media, among policymakers, future business leaders. Everyone's scrambling and trying to get a handle on this. But cyber warfare, it's overplayed in many circumstances. Again, it was talked about in two of the previous sessions of how often how it's described, but it should not misunderstand that cyber capabilities are now an active part of kinetic warfare. And that's probably what really matters. I don't think we'll necessarily have an exclusive cyber war, but as one American general said recently, the first shot in the next war may indeed be fired in cyberspace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes, and have a good time at the symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, David.